For those of you who followed the World Archery Championships in Copenhagen, you may have come across one of the biggest upsets ever seen. There were some surprises. For example, the bottom-seeded Ukrainian team actually won the championship. But the one I'm talking about was something much bigger and much more controversial. This was the elimination of the top American compound shooter, Reo Wilde. In the second qualification round, Reo Wilde scored a 342 out of 360. That's a very respectable score. However, the signed score that was submitted by Reo Wilde reflected 242, 100 points lower. What this meant was that instead of finishing in the top 10, Reo Wilde finished 115th in the field, eliminating himself from the tournament as well as the American team. Apparently, what happened was that when Reo Wilde signed his scorecard, he saw the value of 342. However, when it was submitted to the judges and put into the system, the judges saw 242. Apparently, it was a handwriting issue. To one person it was a 3, to another person it was a 2. The American team appealed the decision. The panel of judges from World Archery ruled in favor of the 242 score, which meant that the decision stood and Wilde and the American team were eliminated. Now, this may surprise you because, well, the arrow values add up to 342. The score is there, it's just that they have a different sign total. Well, according to World Archery rules, this is how it's meant to be done. If there are two scorecards, and there always is, and in World Archery's case, there's usually a paper scorecard and the electronic scorecard, the lower total is used, not the arrow values. The arrow values, in a smaller tournament that's run by a local or regional board, the organizers may have the time to go through and check scorecards, but in a large tournament with hundreds of competitors, it's not feasible for the organizers to manually count up every single value, even though the values are here. They take the signed total as the final score. And if there's a discrepancy between two scorecards, in this case the paper and the electronic version, then the lower total is used. The onus, according to World Archery, really is on the archer to verify the scorecard is correct, that the score is accurate, and that they sign and submit the version which is correct. And in this case, there was a misunderstanding or misreading of someone's handwriting, and that resulted in this decision being made. And I wasn't there. I can't comment further beyond what's been reported, but that's what happened. The ruling stood, and they've chosen to make this a huge message. And who is this message to? Actually, this message is for you. Scoring errors happen all the time. If you've ever shot a competition, or even just a normal round where you had to fill out a scorecard, you may have made a lot of mistakes, and some of them you don't even realize. The problem is that this data is critical for a lot of people. If you shoot in a club environment, then your club recorder has probably given you flack for having mistakes, and it's happened a lot to us as well. And this escalates as you get higher up the chain of importance. The state recorder needs the correct data from clubs in order to issue the right records and badges and awards. So if you don't provide accurate and correctly filled out scorecards, instead of having it go back to you and say, here, fix it up, they simply throw it out. That's a problem. And, there are a lot of headaches which happen because of this. So, in the end, it's up to you as the archer to make sure that your card is filled out correctly. So, what are some of the most common errors that can happen?
I'll cover how to complete scorecards in a different video. Here, we're going to simulate a scorecard being filled out. This is a standard scorecard from Archery Australia, which is likely identical to the scorecards you use in club shoots. Obviously, check that your basic details are correct, your name, round, classification, and so on. This can obviously invalidate your scorecard if incorrect. Though this may seem straightforward, you have to get your name right. Using a different name may result in your scorecard being recognized under a different name. For example, if Leo used Leonard on some scorecards, the recorder may input the result under a different name. I've seen the state rankings list multiple names for the same archer at different ranks, and their points are not combined for the actual rank. All the small details on the card must also be filled correctly. The distances must be recorded and the totals written down after each end and the summary at the end. This is the biggest cause of scorecard problems, making sure the arrow values are correct. Since the total score is derived from the arrow values, any errors must be recognized and clarified. Mistakes do happen. Sometimes the person calling the values might get it wrong, or you heard it incorrectly and wrote down the wrong number. Don't panic, this is easily fixed, but you must be clear about it. If a value is incorrect, cross out the value and write the correct value next to it. Do not try to write over the value. This causes a lot of confusion and is not recognized as a legitimate value. Once the error has been recognized and clarified, all archers on that target must initial the change. If changes are not initialed, even if it's just one error, the entire scorecard is invalidated. The end totals do not need to be initialed, as the arrow value takes precedence. Most official events require double scoring. In this case, two people must independently record the scores and cross-check to see that the running totals are the same. This is actually a rather effective method of catching arithmetic errors. However, the scorers must add the scores independently. They cannot simply copy off each other.
Oh, and if you're not using double scoring for your round, you should. If it's an official sanctioned event, it's more or less a requirement. If it's a small club shoot, even though you don't have to do it, it's a really good habit to do it. One, it trains archers in the scoring system, so you're not relying on the same one or two people to score everything. Secondly, it catches those small errors which happen in the field. And they happen. It's very common. Mental arithmetic can be confusing. Some people are just really bad at it, but more commonly, it's the result of fatigue. If you're shooting for hours, half the day, then getting those numbers to add up on the page can be very stressful. So mistakes do happen, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as they're spotted. And by having two people cross-check the results after every end, then you have a much higher chance of catching any errors which happen. There was an event that our club hosted, a club shoot, where we didn't have enough scorecards to double score, so we had to use single scoring. There was a bit of an oversight in our logistics. And the result was that we gave the junior trophy to the wrong person, because the person who was scoring made a calculation error and gave himself extra 10 points. So the result was very disappointing, because it was a very intense one-on-one competition. There were like a few points apart, but the guy who came second actually came first all along, and he never knew that. So it was very embarrassing to have to take back the trophy and give it back to the right person, and this could have been avoided with double scoring.
Once the scorecard is complete, the values must be accurately totaled, including the number of 10s and X's. Tick any awards that are to be claimed. Check that every box is filled in correctly and every arrow value change is initialed. It is the responsibility of the archer to check that everything is correct when they sign it. Oh, and you may want to make sure your handwriting is clear. Just saying.
So what happens if you submit an incorrect scorecard? Depending on the size of the event and the organizers, they may chase you up and ask you to amend small errors, and this is most common for people who forget to initial changes. If they can't find you, or there's simply too many people, they might simply invalidate your scorecard. That means you can't claim any awards or badges for your score, and you might miss out on a placing in the event. So it's really, really important that you make sure, not ask somebody else to double check, but you make sure that your scorecard is correct. And again, it may seem like such a pain to go through this paperwork and make sure the scores are correct, but you're making it easier for your club recorder if you do it correctly. Otherwise, you might find your scorecard invalidated, your placing stripped, and perhaps even your spot in the World Championships taken away. Anyway, this is NUSensei. Hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.